You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of kizuki as the following. Kizuki 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, can you love and still leave? When I was 16, I had my first love, my first boyfriend. I was so in love with him. He was a couple years older than me, and he had just started university in America. But then he came back to Japan for a while, and that's when we got to spend some time together. It was so sweet and just so lovely. He treated me beautifully well. We made so many memories together. We pretty much grew up together, just had a really good time. All in all, we were together for almost 2 years, but then it came time for him to go back to school in America. I was crushed. We had been so together that his physical departure felt so achy. For a while, we tried to do the long distance thing. I even flew to visit him at his school and stayed with him. But over time, it just started to get difficult to maintain. And finally, one day, he called. His voice was somber and gentle. And he told me that he was calling off the relationship. I think I asked why, because there wasn't anything noticeable. There wasn't any wrongdoing or any fight or anything like that. It was just the reality of life pulling us in different directions. He told me that he still deeply cared about me, and I could feel that. And I could even tell that he was rather broken to have to say these words out loud. But he basically said that, our young relationship didn't have much of a future because, well, for the foreseeable future, he would be at school in the United States, and probably even after graduation, he would stay there. And me, on the other hand, I was in Tokyo, and my circumstances didn't allow for me to go to university in the States. And so I, for the foreseeable future, would stay put in Japan. So after he expressed this unfortunate but no other way to go sort of calling it, I took it in and I said to him, okay, I understand. I respect your decision. Because I did deeply care for him and I trusted him. I understood where he was coming from. Even though I hadn't reached the same conclusion, I could feel the truth in what he was conveying to me. After that, there was a moment of silence, and then he said at the end of that call, "You make it harder for me to leave." That made us laugh a little bit through the tears and how hard it felt for our hearts at the time. And that was that. Something about the fact that I didn't cling or fight for him to stay. It just felt aligned, as difficult as it was. And even for him to tell me, you make it harder for me to leave, there was such a tenderness in that. And after that, we spoke a few more times on the phone, on and off. But then our little teenage legacy was done. I bring this up because it was my first experience of something I've now felt many times in my life. That moment when you still care deeply, but also coming to the knowing that it's time to let go. How do you walk away when your heart still loves and longs for togetherness? Can one love and still choose to leave? In fact, sometimes we must. Later on in my life, with all the yoga and meditation practices I came to know, I realized, just like the Christian Bible says, there is a time to reap and a time to sow. I learned in my yogic practices that there is a perfection, a time to inhale and a time to exhale. That is a time to take in and embrace, and a rightful time to release. Just like the seasons and how the tides come in and let out, or the way the breathing works in our system. Things come, and yes, they must go. So for me, this was such a tender kizuki, a little bit of an achy one, a bittersweet one. Love isn't always a reason to stay. Sometimes the letting go, the release is the love. I want to note that there's a difference here between rupture and release, because the kind of breakage, one can make wounds, but the other blesses each other as we release each other. And when you can let go with that kind of care, without the need to villainize the other or create a fight, in order so that you can let go, there's a silent understanding there that just feels like deeper love. I want to note that because a lot of times people equate staying with love, that togetherness with devotion. But when you really, really look at it, while it's awesome, beautiful, wonderful to keep when it's our time to hold, embrace, and inhale, it's just as holy, in my opinion, to know when to let go, exhale, release. So leaving is not always a betrayal, right? Leaving is a part of life. Just like meeting and melding is also a part of life, one that we really look forward to. Everything that arrives eventually asks to be let go. Even joy, even spring. And yet, we can still feel the grief, even when no one did anything wrong. That's the ache of it, right? Grief with no wrongdoing. And in this case, the sadness doesn't mean it shouldn't have happened. It means that it mattered that much. But clinging, that's a different matter. The clinging is what's worth taking a look at, because it's often the source of another kind of suffering, maybe an unnecessary one. The hard part is, though, that while you're still clinging, you don't yet know, or you're so closed to the idea of departure that you can't fathom that the release might just be a doorway to your next opening. So, if you're still holding on, if you're waiting for destruction to justify your departure, let me say this gently. You don't have to wait for it to get bad before you give yourself permission to let go. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. Sometimes it means you really did, or you really do. Sometimes it signals the deepest form of respect. I want to leave you with this quote that's really remained with me since the first time I came across it in one of Paulo Coelho's books. It goes like this. You can't say to the spring, "Come now and last as long as possible." You can only say, "Come and bless me with your hope and stay as long as you can." I think of this every time it's right to let something go, because even if it's hard, it's still less hard than clinging to something that's not meant to stay. Love isn't meant to be a binding. It's meant to be free, and it's meant to be a blessing each other to be free. Not something you grip, but something you give and readily receive. That means that it must come with a willingness to release with tenderness and truth.
Thank you for listening. Learn more about me and my Kizuki journaling Mae Y method at my website, kizukijournaling.com. That's KIZUKIJOURNALING.com. Or find me on Instagram at MAEYOSHIKAWA.